So before we get into the budget and the costs and savings that we're anticipating over the next few years, the slide that you see now is just a brief overview of what our department is and who it consists of. There's one administrator, which is myself, one administrative assistant. We have 8 instructional staff, which includes 6 full-time PE teachers, 2 in each building, 1 PE and health teacher who's split between the middle school and high school, and 1 full-time health education teacher located in the high school. We have 4 school nurses, which includes 1 that was added during this school year. We have 1 nurse in each building, elementary, middle, and high, in addition to the floating nurse role that we now have. For our coaches, that's our athletic staff, we've added 4 in the 2021-2022 school year. This fall we had 21 coaches, which included the additional 2 football coaches and the 1 field hockey coach. This winter we had 22 coaches, which is up 1 from the past, where we've added 1 girls basketball coach. This spring we're anticipating having 20 coaches, which is no change from the previous school year.
David, before you go on, the floating nurse, it's because of COVID? Because of more students being ill? Like what?
So the majority of it has come from our inability to staff substitute nurses when there's a problem.
Okay.
Now we have, with having our floating nurse, 1, we can support a building that may need additional support for COVID,
okay.
But specifically if a nurse is absent, we know that we have another nurse to fill that position.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think we realized, our nurses, once COVID hit, were inundated with new tasks and responsibilities they never had before. We're asking them to do testing and everything else. So this opportunity presented a way for us both to alleviate substitute nurse problems. Nurses would refrain from taking any time off because they knew it could leave a building uncovered, and then we had nurses split between buildings trying to cover. So the floating nurse was something we had years ago and really provides some way to alleviate the strain of an individual being sick, and also provides us additional coverage as needed for those nurses that have really just been overwhelmed for many years, and couldn't be more proud of the work that they've done for our students in our school district, because they've really stepped up and done anything we asked of them to help keep our students and staff safe. So I do want to throw that in there.
And I think it's really good to be proactive instead of reactive. So that's good. Okay, thank you.
Oops.
I threw him off.
Just give us 1 second. Okay. The slide that you see now is referencing our fall athletic offerings. In the fall, we offer cheerleading, cross country, field hockey, football, boys soccer, girls swimming, and volleyball. You'll see at the bottom, the bold text indicates a new program, which for us this year, we brought back JV field hockey and JV football, which along with the athlete participation increased our coaching staff because we need coaches to supervise those athletes. The M in parentheses indicates a merged sport. For girls swimming, we are merged with Mayapack. We host that, so we provide half of the coaching stipend as well as the transportation for our girls to and from meets. In the winter, we host boys basketball, girls cheerleading, gymnastics, ice hockey, boys swimming, wrestling, and indoor track. This year, girls basketball, we were able to field a JV team for the first time in a long time. So again, that came with an additional coaching stipend. And gymnastics, ice hockey, and boys swimming is merged with Lakeland. For those sports, we do not host. So while we do contribute to the coaching stipends with our joint programs, it gives us relief in the transportation aspect. In the spring, we host baseball, golf, boys lacrosse, girls lacrosse, softball, and track and field. None of those sports, as of today, are merged. We are anticipating having a merger with softball with Haldane Central School District. We will be hosting that. We will be taking on some of their girls because they do not have a varsity program to offer to their athletes. So as we look ahead into the budget, what we can anticipate for the next few years, we're going to cover topics like transportation, stipends for our coaches, our trainer, and our support staff, the various dues and fees that the athletic department pays to the state section, conference, and BOCES, materials and supplies such as jerseys and athletic equipment, and the live streaming services that we offer. The goals of our budget are really founded in safety and sustainability. We want to ensure that our students have adequate and safe athletic equipment for their practices and their games. We want to make sure that we have a sustainable cycle of replacing old or outdated, broken equipment. And we want to make sure that we're always creating and maintaining a variety of athletic programs at various levels, middle school through high school, for all of our students. And of course, we want to try to eliminate any unnecessary costs or redundancies to the district and the community. So looking ahead, short-term and long-term, these are anticipated costs that we're expected to shoulder going forward. The first is a constant. Those are our coaching stipends. Those stipends increase as per our Putnam Valley Federation of Teachers contract. Those are set rates that will go up every year as we maintain and retain our coaches from season to season. Another area that's causing those stipend costs to increase is the increase in JV programs that we've offered, which require more coaches. Like I said before, we have 2 additional coaches in football and 1 apiece in field hockey and girls basketball. Another anticipated cost that we're anticipating is equipment and supplies. There's been almost a universal increase in the cost of equipment across all platforms, not just in athletics. And the recent supply chain, dilemmas have really exacerbated that. Another reason why these costs are going to go up is because we need to replace non-functional scoreboards and various other protective equipment that we have, such as our mats down at the track for our jumping and our vaulting activities. So these are things that in the short term will need to be replaced. Our fees, dues, and officials, again, with our increased number of teams and programs that we offer, we're going to see an increased number of dues associated with those teams. And our local live platform costs through BOCES increase with our usage, our hours, and our total screening capacity. For long-term down-the-road improvements that the discussions have just begun to take place, some of the items that we're touching upon are lighting outdoors, specifically LED lighting versus our fluorescent bulbs that we have now, turf maintenance, and the fencing surrounding all of the athletic perimeters and facilities. Going into those long-term improvements, again, these are down the road, but things that we need to start thinking about now so that we are not surprised when it comes time to fix them. On the left, you'll see an image of our stadium lights as they finished the fall season. As you can see, some of them are obviously burning out. And on the right, you'll see the outfield of our baseball field, which in the fall serves as one of our practice fields as of right now for our football team, because our turf is very congested due to the high number of field-needing teams that we have. So just speaking on the lights to begin with, what I'm proposing we do in the future is move away from this light bulb method that we have now and switch over to LEDs. The main reason for that is, simply put, the bulb life. It's a cost to replace them the first time, but those bulbs will outlive most of us. They have 20 times the life of a regular bulb, and they come with a variety of warranties that ensure that if they should go out before their life or their half-life is met, they're replaced at no cost to us. The LED bulbs allow us to do something that's called selective lighting, whereas now when we turn our lights on outside, they spew light into every direction. It's called spill. LED lights allow us to target the light, like the lights you see in the image. The field of play is beautifully lit in the air and on the ground, but you'll see the lighting hardly travels onto the track, doesn't make it to the stands, and doesn't make it to any of the surrounding buildings, which leads it to be a more neighborhood-friendly option, especially as we continue to expand and our needs get greater. We don't want to disrupt any of our neighbors in the community. We don't want light spilling into their backyard, and we don't want causing any disruptions for any of our roadways. The other positive aspect of this is that it has automated interactive systems, meaning that right now we have 2 options with our lights. Our lights can go on, our lights can go off. With systems like this, we can have lights flash for celebrations, we can turn half the lights off. We can target them to one area of the field all automatically without having to go up there and move anything. So for events like graduation or any ceremonies that we would want to have it light, we can spotlight those events and really just give a more intimate experience to whatever it is we're hosting on our outside fields. And the other benefit to this is that it would be fitted to our current structure. So those light poles, those light fixtures are the most expensive component of our lighting system. And with today's technology, the two companies that we've spoken to would both be able to come in and fit these LED fixtures directly to what we have standing, reducing the need to replace or recreate the wheel, if you would, for the lighting systems that we already have. This is just another example of how the LED lighting can be targeted. This is a baseball field complex. Obviously, our backyard doesn't look quite like this, but as you can see, they have each field perfectly lit within the foul lines, and even the fields are split in dark areas, reducing that spill, reducing the disruption that it could have on other areas. The second item that I'd like to talk about are the potential benefits of turfing the backfield here at the middle school, high school campus. And the primary driving force behind that is that long-term, it's a safer playing surface. When you're playing on grass fields, especially as they are now here at Putnam Valley, our grass field retains a lot of water, becomes very muddy, becomes very unstable. That compounded with the fact that we do have wildlife around us, that this fall we have to deal with burrowing animals in the backfield, creating divots and holes for student athletes to roll their ankle or other various falling injuries. The turf eliminates those things. It comes with a retaining wall, it comes with a measured flat surface, and the surface is unchanging. It's set. It will never have an animal dig into it. It's not going to randomly cave in because it's built over concrete. It reduces our maintenance needs for our fields and grounds that we have right now. Turfs come with set maintenance plans of things that you need to do over certain periods of time and over a number of certain years. It'll also help to extend the life of the turf that we already have. Right now, all of our teams, when we have games, play off of that field, which crushes the half-life of the turf because we need to replace and repair much more frequently because it's never getting a break. With two equal turf fields that we're able to host all of our sports, one, we could host sports on the same day, which creates more of a community experience for us, but two, on days where we have opposite schedules, we can play on the turf on this Friday, leave it alone on Saturday, come back to it on Monday, extending the life of both turfs and avoiding overuse issues. As far as a day-to-day benefit would go, it would alleviate a lot of the field congestion we have now. It would remove that need of creating a mock football field on our grass outfield of our baseball field. And it would also help alleviate some of the issues regarding our modified practices, which currently go to either the town park or the elementary school. Having a turf space that we know would be consistent would allow us to keep some of those teams on campus and reduce the need for transporting them to and from these off-site locations when they could just go behind their school. And last, it would allow for multi-game celebrations for homecoming. Homecoming is always a big thing that we try to do here. We're trying in the future to schedule those events all within one weekend so we can make a homecoming event and a rally rather than having one homecoming game here, senior night there. This would allow us to have multiple games at multiple times and create more of that big event focus. The image that you're looking at now is an old image before the Wellness Center was created. This shows an architect rendering of what a turf in the backfield would look like. And the major thing that I want to draw your attention to, in the bottom left corner of the field structure here, you'll see that we've managed to turf the softball field, which would give them an outstanding benefit because one of the biggest issues they face now, again, when it rains or we have any type of weather, this third base line on the wood side of the field constantly floods. We end up needing to import, clay and feeder materials to bolster up that third base line. And as the season goes on, as the spring goes on, that problem just gets worse and worse. As we try to remove that water, the third base line gets deeper and deeper, so every time it rains, it stores more and more water. It wouldn't affect the home run field at all. We'd still have the ability to put in a temporary home run fence when softball was in session. It would actually allow us to make that fence a little bit stronger because those fittings in the turf, again, would be fitted in cement and would have a nice cover for them, making them less of an issue as they are in the grass with people running by. And it would allow us a full football, lacrosse, field hockey, and soccer field, just as our turf is now. It's really, long-term looking at it, it is a good supplementary option to have. We are obviously years away from being there, but it is something I want to make people aware of for the safety of our student athletes and the sustainability of the resources that we keep creating and developing to help feed the community. It gives us another space for us to use, for community partners to use, and really just provides more of that community building area that we're trying to develop. We spoke a lot about spending money and things that cost us money, but luckily we do have some anticipated savings coming through. First, one of our most expensive costs that we have is transportation of our student athletes. We anticipate having slightly reduced transportation because we've started initiating, similar to other districts in the area, self-transportation requirements for our merged non-hosted teams. That would include our gymnastics, our ice hockey, our boys swimming team at the current moment. That seems to be the status quo amongst districts in the area, that students who participate on a team not hosted at their school are responsible for transporting themselves to their practices. Once they're at their practices, once they're at the other school, that host school provides transportation to wherever they need to go. We've also managed to reduce our return transportation for our fall and spring modified teams that are currently off-site. In the past, we would transport teams to that site for their game and then back to the school to get picked up. Both of those locations are only about 1 mile to 2 miles away from where we are right now. And now, instead of bringing them back to the school while their parents are there watching them, they can get picked up directly from that location, which relieves us of keeping a bus there the entire time. For our savings that we're looking at in materials and supplies, we have an equipment manager position right now, which has greatly helped in reducing our redundancies of equipment and managing our inventory to make sure that we're appropriately supplied with lacrosse balls, basketballs, whatever it may be, and that anything that is now getting out of compliance, such as helmets and things that expire with their safety ratings, we make sure that we're on top of that and we have those items replaced and restored before that date comes. As we've been going on and replacing this equipment, we've been sure that we're securing our large cost equipment that comes with applicable warranties and long-term maintenance schedules. Things like the table in the gym, the score table in the gym, the new table that we plan on getting comes with a 6-year warranty and preventative maintenance where they'll come in, they'll look at the table, they'll replace any bulbs, any wires that may be faulty, just to help extend the life of that table. We've implemented a preventative maintenance system in the weight room to help extend the life of that equipment, to make sure that the pulleys, the cables, all those things remain safe for our student athletes. And again, just to extend that life, because to keep replacing those things every 2-3 years when they could be living for 6, 7, 8 years, just doesn't make sense, and we don't want to create that waste cycle. The other big change that we're making is I've started to implement a jersey cycle. What that will do, will create set times. We're looking at 4 years right now that varsity jerseys will be replaced. In the past, it has just been, okay, this team, their jersey looks like it's falling apart, let's buy them a new jersey. This coach is complaining that their jersey doesn't fit their requirements anymore, let's get a new jersey, and it's just kind of been replaced as needed. By creating this cycle of jerseys, we know that at the 4-year mark, those jerseys are still totally usable. So by moving them away from the varsity program down to the junior varsity program, we know that they have a quality jersey. Our varsity jerseys will always be, the most current and effective, sustainable jerseys that are on the market at that time. And by the time that those jerseys make their way down to the modified program, we're not looking at threads and rags. We're looking at nice, preserved jerseys that have a set shelf life here. And no one will ever have to have that raggedy ripped jersey with the silk screening peeling off. Everyone will have adequate supplies for their teams. The other area in materials and supplies that we're working strongly towards to ensure that we always keep this savings going is we're only working with vendors that are state contracted, which gives districts like ours about a 30% savings on team equipment regardless of what it is, whether it's a table for the gym, whether it's a helmet for a football player, whether it's a net for a volleyball team. Anything that falls into those state contracts saves us money long-term by working with those vendors specifically, rather than trying to nitpick one item from one vendor and sending each individual thing out to bids. We know that we're getting bulk savings because they're on those state-approved contracts. And lastly, our savings coming from our chaperone and staffing stipends. We've been assessing throughout the year our chaperone needs by sport and by season to make sure that our events are appropriately staffed but not overstaffed. We want to make sure that our students are safe, our grounds are secure, and our community is taken care of, but we don't want to overpopulate in areas that we don't need to have them in. We've created a universal no practice day on Sunday, which applies to us in two different ways. One, according to Section 1 in the state of New York currently, you're not allowed to practice 7 days in a row at any given time for any athletic season. So in the past, teams have said, okay, I'm going to take off Monday because I want to practice on Sunday, or Thursday, this team's not going to practice, but Friday, that one is. This way, we've set the schedule for all of the teams. Sunday also happens to be the most expensive day to have custodial staff on site. So we're saving that cost of the district of having to staff the building by universally cutting that out for our team. So our teams still have 6 practice days, and the most affordable practice days to the district and to the budget. And last, we're really making a big push to recruit new teachers, which, one, helps to build our program and build our sense of community, but two, it allows us to have a temporary decrease in our stipend costs. New teachers who come in on the first step of the coaching stipend as per the contract, just like they come in on the first step of the teaching contract. So while over time that stipend will always increase, it's increasing from a lower base level rather than bringing in a veteran with 30 years of experience who's automatically at the top of our list. We're trying to establish and build the capacity of our new teachers and get them involved in the school community and get them more face time with our kids. Another way that we're not necessarily saving money, but we're attempting to offset our expenses is through our booster clubs, our fundraising efforts, and the revenue generated from events that we're hosting at the school. We've been hosting special events this year to offset team expenses. This is in partnership with our booster club. The events that we've had so far this year have been our Valley Wrestling Tournament, where we hosted 5 other teams plus our own, our Tiger Cheer Tournament, which is coming up next weekend on Saturday the 5th, and our alumni basketball game, which we're hoping to make an annual event, which was by far and away the most largely attended event that we've had this year. It was a great community event. It was so nice to see all of our alumni and their parents coming back in to play some nice competitive basketball. All of those events help generate revenue that through the Booster Club can be dispersed to offset team expenses, whether it's for senior night, specialized equipment, awareness months, whether it's breast cancer awareness, whatever it may be, those special jerseys and uniforms that our students wear, and that compounded with our concessions that we have at game events, our superstore, which has provided the community with that one-stop shop for any gear for any team that they may want, has been very successful. We just closed out our winter superstore, so we're waiting on the numbers there. Our spring superstore should be opening pretty shortly into March once that spring season begins. And again, it's just providing us with a way to offset expenses, not just for the kids, for equipment that they may need that might be essential to it, but for any special events, senior recognition, parent nights, and things like that. And last, we have, of course, our facility rental, all these facilities that we have. We try to make them available to the community as much as we can once our own student athletes are taken care of and our clinics occur. We're still ironing out details with what various locations look like in terms of rental, but that will be an ongoing source of fundraising and revenue for us. And I wanted to end, obviously with a thank you for supporting us, for supporting me in the athletic department. And if you could see right up there, that's a freshly taken picture. We have one of the most beautiful sunsets over our athletic facilities outside. Thank you, everybody.
Dave, I just have a question for you. Specifically, since it's a budget presentation, that the dream casting for turf is not something that's going to be reflected in this current budget that we're going to be talking about, just for clarity's sake.
Say that one more time.
For clarity's sake, there is no budget money that's going into this budget for the dream casting for turf, correct?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. Those were, long-term projections of possibilities that we could look at down the road. There is nothing, on paper, in stone at all about that.
I have a question.
Yes.
Would you possibly consider company sponsorship for replacing turf in the future?
Sure, I mean, that would be a more complicated question than just a simple yes. It would depend on, what the reciprocities are there, what they want in terms of advertising, what they want in terms of marketing and labeling, but I wouldn't necessarily be against it, within reason.
David, first, thank you. The jerseys, the turnover for the jerseys, that's for both girls and boys, same time frame?
Yes, all
Is that
teams.
correct? Okay, I just want to confirm that.
All teams. Coming up this year, we will be replacing the boys and girls basketball jerseys to go into effect for their next season, next winter. Starting the 1st of July in next school year's budget, we'll be replacing boys and girls lacrosse to go into effect into the following year, and we'll be getting each team onto their 4-year cycle based on where they got their last jerseys leading up to this.
Thank you. When do you gauge interest for fall sports to determine adequate staffing for the fall?
So we send out a student interest survey, a Google form that the students fill out, which allow us to base our projections of how many students may or may not fall on these teams. We have minimum roster numbers that we must field to be able to compete. If those roster numbers coincide with the amount of interest we have, it allows us to project the varsity JV team. Now, sometimes that doesn't pan out. Sometimes we may have enough for our varsity team, like girls soccer, for example. We didn't quite have the numbers that we needed to field a JV soccer team, so we didn't. And for this year, we had savings in that area because we didn't need to implement another coaching stipend. Next year, should we find ourselves in the position where we can field that team, that would be something that we'd be able to project from our Google form, from our documents, and plan to include that stipend in our budget.
Thank you.
So maybe the best example of that was last spring, we were talking about whether or not or over the summer, whether or not to carry a JV football team, because there is a huge expenditure that comes along with that. And we were provided essentially a roster of students before we even opened our registration window, where a list of names of students who had verbally committed, and that was sort of enough for us to at least start planning on finding coaches and scheduling. And then once the registration window opened, then we confirmed those numbers were there to staff and run those teams.
One more question, this is for you, Jeremy. Equipment manager position?
Yep. So that was something we've discussed at the board table a couple of times. Megan, our athletic trainer, took on that stipend position, and she's done a tremendous job. She took our storage room that was a bit of a chaos and made it clean and organized. And really, I think the savings is being able to share equipment, right? Every team doesn't need its own 3 water jugs. Every team doesn't need the same pile of cones, right? So there's a lot of savings in terms of having a well-organized and distributed equipment that allows teams to share equipment by season, as opposed to everyone maintain their own pile of equipment. And obviously that's not the most financially or fiscal way to go about providing supplies for teams.
Thank you. So it wasn't it was a stipend position?
Just a
not
stipend.
an add-on. Okay.
No. It's a stipend
Right.
for an employee who's already here.
Okay, I just want to confirm that.
And
Thank
that
you.
really did, when Megan was going through it this summer, we found so much stuff that, one team had, that the equivalent girls team had the exact same thing of, that nobody uses at the same time. So the savings was tremendous just in redundancies alone of purchasing. We didn't have to buy so many things that coaches had requested for their teams because we realized we already had it in storage on 3 different other shelves. So now we have our community area, our sports-specific areas in there, and those shared items between programs, between seasons. It was a really big help.
Thank you.
And this is, I have one question, not really so much for you, David, maybe more for Natalie. I like the idea of sort of having a day free, you know, in terms of overtime. But I know Magma is always a Sunday program, so, and that's a short term, but will we try to move that to when athletics is on, like on a Saturday, or are we going to keep the Sunday? I know it's a little.
That's something that we can definitely do. Right now, currently with our athletic program, we try to get all of our teams out of the building on Saturday by noon. They're mostly morning practices. They're usually shorter than they are during the weekday, which does leave the afternoon on Saturday open for additional programming, whether it be Magma, whether it be a community group, whether it be anything.
So just to quickly answer, yes, we are looking to move Magma. Before I even knew that Sunday was a day off kind of a day, we were looking to move that during the week, in either an early evening or late afternoon, because I think families were finding it more and more difficult to block off an entire morning on Sundays, and that was sort of a family day. So we are looking to move it.
I just want to take this opportunity to thank Dave and commend him for his hard work. He's been with us for a very short period of time, and it's already had a tremendous impact on our athletic program and our school as a whole. I just think the numbers of students participating in sports is a testament to the job Dave's done of going out and talking to students in the hallway. The door of his office is always open. Students feel welcome and supported, and I think that his persona has really helped increase the enrollment or the students participating in our athletic program, which I think ultimately benefits both the school and our students. So I do want to take the opportunity to thank Dave and his staff for doing a tremendous job in a very short period of time. So thank you.
Thank you.